Laughter burst through the crowded off-base bar like broken glass, sharp and careless, rolling over the low hum of conversations and clinking bottles. She sat alone in a corner booth, a small paperback open in her hands, legs crossed, posture relaxed but alert. To anyone else, she looked ordinary, invisible. The group of soldiers entered loud, confident, already performing for the room. Their voices carried. Their jokes were crude. Their boots scraped chairs as they took over the center tables. It didn't take long before their eyes landed on her. First came the whispers. Then the smirks. Then the comments, no longer subtle. "Lost, sweetheart?" one of them said. She didn't look up. Their leader stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her table. Too close. His breath smelled like beer and entitlement. She closed her book, slid it into her bag, and stood, trying to walk past him. That was when he kicked her. Not a shove. Not a stumble. A full, deliberate kick to her face. Gasps ripped through the room. Chairs scraped. Phones lifted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." She hit the floor hard. And she stayed there, not unconscious. Not stunned. Thinking. The room waited for her to explode. She didn't. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to FOB Veteran Stories. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name, at least the one on the temporary base access badge clipped to her bag, read Lena Carter. She was 29 years old, 5'6", lean in a way that looked more like endurance than strength. Her hair was tied low at the nape of her neck, not styled, not messy, just controlled. No makeup. No jewelry. Nothing that asked to be noticed. She rose slowly from the floor after the kick, not rushing, not panicking. One hand braced against the booth. The other checked her lip, already swelling. She wiped the blood away with the back of her thumb, eyes steady. People watched. They always did. Her posture never changed. Even hurt, even humiliated, she stood like she had all the time in the world. To everyone else, she was nobody. Some admin assistant. Some logistics clerk. Maybe a contractor's daughter. Someone unimportant enough to be disposable. That was what they saw. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't plead. She adjusted the strap of her bag, picked up her fallen book, and walked toward the door. The bartender, an older man with gray hair and a faded unit tattoo on his forearm, watched her with narrowed eyes. He had seen men fake confidence. He had seen real discipline. She moved like the second kind. When she reached the door, he cleared his throat. "You all right, miss?" She paused. Turned. Gave a small nod. "Yes, sir." That was all. No trembling. No complaint. Just 2 words. Behind her, the laughter had already started again. "Did you see that?" someone said. "She didn't even try. She probably deserved it," another voice added. "Should have known her place." She heard all of it. Her face never changed. Lena stepped outside into the night air, inhaled once through her nose, slow and controlled, then again. She counted her breaths without meaning to. Always did. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. 4 seconds. 4 seconds. Her hands folded in front of her, fingers interlacing lightly, not clenched. That habit had been trained into her long before anyone here had ever known her name. She stood under the flickering street lamp for a moment, letting the cold air numb the heat in her cheek. Then she walked toward the base shuttle stop. Inside, the bar buzzed louder now. The story was already spreading. She didn't even fight back. She just took it. Probably scared. She should have cried. The bartender didn't laugh. He wiped down the counter slowly, eyes drifting to the door she had left through. Something about her had felt wrong. Not broken. Not weak. Wrong in the way a loaded weapon feels wrong when everyone else thinks it's empty. When the leader of the group raised his glass, the room cheered. "Guess she learned her lesson," he said. A few soldiers slapped the table. A few recorded. A few said nothing. One of the younger privates shifted uncomfortably. She didn't even yell. So? Someone replied. So nothing, he muttered. Back at the shuttle stop, Lena stood alone, hands folded, gaze forward. She always stood where she could see exits. Always chose seats with her back to walls. Always scanned reflections in windows without moving her head. She did it now too. Not because she was afraid. Because she was trained. A flash of memory slipped in uninvited. Wet boots, heavy packs. A voice counting seconds in her ear. Cold water creeping up her spine. Someone shouting, again. She pushed it away. Her phone vibrated. She ignored it. When the shuttle arrived, she stepped on last. She sat near the back, by the window, book open again. She turned the page with careful fingers, even though she wasn't reading. Her jaw tightened once, then relaxed. At the base, the story spread faster. By morning, everyone had a version. She froze. She cried later. She begged. She ran. None of them were true. In the mess hall, laughter followed her. Not loud. Just enough. She picked up her tray, moved like she didn't hear it. A tall soldier leaned toward her. Why didn't you hit him back? She kept walking. He laughed. Guess we know what you are now. She didn't look at him. At a corner table, an older master sergeant watched her sit alone, posture straight, eyes forward. He noticed the way she placed her tray, centered. The way she didn't slouch. The way she scanned the room like she was counting. He had been in long enough to recognize habits you don't learn in classrooms. He lifted his coffee in her direction, not obvious. Just a subtle nod. She returned it. Barely. Someone across the room mimicked the kick, laughing. The sound hit her like static. She breathed in. 4 seconds. Out. 4 seconds. She didn't touch her face. Didn't flinch. Didn't shrink. Later, in a hallway, a young female corporal stopped her. Why didn't you fight back? She asked quietly. Lena met her eyes. For a second, the corporal thought she might answer. Lena said nothing. She stepped around her and kept walking. That silence unsettled people more than anger ever could. Because silence meant intention. And intention meant something was coming. Even if no one knew what. Not yet. The first place Lena went after that shuttle ride was not her room. It was base security. The office smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A corporal behind the counter glanced up, saw the swelling on Lena's cheek, and straightened. Ma'am, are you okay? Lena placed her bag on the counter and slid her access badge forward. Her voice stayed even. I need to file an incident report. The corporal blinked. What happened? Lena didn't dramatize it. She didn't describe feelings. She didn't tell a story. She listed facts. Off-base bar near the main gate, approximately 2200 hours. 4 soldiers. One identified as Sergeant First Class, Derek Vance. She paused, eyes narrowing slightly as she pulled his name from memory. He made verbal comments, blocked my path, and struck me. A kick to the face. The corporal's eyebrows rose. A kick? Yes. Any witnesses? Yes. Any video? Yes. She didn't smile when she said it. She didn't sound proud. She sounded prepared. The corporal leaned forward, lowering his voice. Did you fight back? Lena held his gaze. No. Why not? She blinked once, slow. I want the report to reflect exactly what happened, without distraction. The corporal sat back, something shifting behind his eyes. He had seen fights that turned into messy stories. 2 people yelling. 2 people bleeding. 2 people claiming innocence. This was different. He typed as she spoke, documenting time, location, names, physical action, visible injury. Lena offered her phone so he could record the swelling and the split lip. She asked him to request the security camera footage from the parking lot outside the bar and to identify witnesses who had lifted their phones. Not because she wanted revenge. Because she wanted a record. When she finished, she read the report before signing. She corrected one detail calmly. It wasn't a shove, she said. It was a kick. The corporal nodded and fixed it. As she walked out, she didn't look back. In the hallway, her phone vibrated again. This time she checked it. A single line from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then slid the phone back into her pocket as if it meant nothing. She didn't blot the number. She didn't reply. She remembered it. The next morning, the base felt different. The air was colder. The sky still dark. Floodlights lit the training yard in harsh white beams. Mud clung to boots. Breath rose in clouds. Joint training meant mixed units, mixed egos, and mixed rules. It also meant the smallest misunderstandings could turn into problems no one wanted to own. Lena arrived 10 minutes early. She stood on the edge of the yard, hands clasped behind her back, scanning the perimeter. Not anxiously, methodically. Like she was reading a map only she could see. A clipboard rested under her arm. Her badge still said Lena Carter. Nothing about her looked like someone who belonged at the front of a formation. And then the men from the bar showed up. They came in loud again, like the world belonged to them. Sergeant First Class Vance walked at the center, chin up, jaw set, the kind of swagger that feeds on attention. Two of the specialists flanked him, smirking at Lena as if they were still in that bar. As if the kick had been a joke that ended with her losing. Vance's eyes landed on her cheek. Still bruised. He smiled. The smile said, "You did nothing." The formation gathered in sloppy lines, boots shifting, hands in pockets, laughter low and confident. One voice carried through the yard. "Hey, that her?" Another chuckled. "Looks like it." A few heads turned. A few phones lifted, even here. And then a staff officer stepped out of the admin building and raised his voice. "All trainees, fall in. Listen up." The yard quieted, not from respect, but from habit. The officer read from a roster, listing unit reps, instructors, schedule blocks. Then he said the words that cracked the morning open. "Lead instructor for this joint evolution, Carter." There was a pause. A ripple. Then a burst of laughter that didn't even try to hide itself. Vance turned his head slowly toward his men, grinning wider, like the universe had just handed him a gift. "You've got to be kidding," someone muttered. Lena stepped forward, calm as stone, and faced the formation. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "Good morning," she said. "Today is endurance, water confidence, and extraction drills. You will follow instructions exactly. You will maintain safety standards exactly. Any deviation will result in immediate reset." Vance raised a hand like a student asking a stupid question. "Ma'am," he said, dragging the word out, "are you sure you're in the right place?" A few soldiers snickered. Lena didn't react. She looked at him like she was looking at a number on a checklist. "Fall in," she said. Vance didn't move. He stepped closer instead, invading space the way he had in the bar, testing boundaries. "You got some nerve," he murmured, loud enough for others to hear. "Reporting me, then showing up here pretending you're somebody." Lena kept her hands behind her back. "Fall in," she repeated, same tone, same cadence. Vance laughed again, louder, more theatrical. "What happens if I don't?" Lena held his gaze. "Then you fall out." There was no insult in it. No threat. Just procedure. That word, fall out, landed heavier than anyone expected, because it meant paperwork. It meant command notice. It meant consequences. Vance's smile tightened. He turned to his men like the hero of the moment. "All right," he said, mocking. "Let's see what the little librarians got." They began the first circuit. Weighted carries across wet sand. Rope climbs. Low crawls under barriers. Short sprints between cones. The exercises were not unusual. The standards were. Lena watched like a machine that didn't miss details. "Back straight," she said to one soldier, voice calm. "Full extension," to another. Reset. Again, to a third. At first they laughed every time she said it. They laughed when she corrected them, laughed when she timed them, laughed when she wrote notes on her clipboard. They thought she was trying to prove something. They didn't understand she wasn't proving anything. She was measuring. Vance took shortcuts on purpose. Half reps. Quick drops. Sloppy form. He wanted to show the crowd that rules didn't apply to him and that she couldn't enforce them. Lena watched. Then she spoke. Reset. Vance stopped, breathing hard, smirking. For what? Improper carry, she said. That's not improper, he snapped. Lena pointed at his arms. Your grip failed. Your posture failed. Your teammate compensated. Reset. Vance's eyes flashed. He stepped closer, voice dropping. You like doing this? He hissed. You like embarrassing me? Lena didn't blink. This is training, she said. Not personal. He laughed bitterly. Sure, he reset. Again. And again. Time dragged. Mud splashed. Boots slipped. Tempers rose. At first, the formation enjoyed the spectacle. They whispered jokes. They nudged each other. They watched Lena like she was entertainment. Then the laughter started thinning. Because Lena never changed. She didn't get flustered. She didn't get angry. She didn't gloat. She called resets the way weather calls rain. Calm, inevitable, unquestionable. Vance's men began to look less amused and more exhausted. Their faces tightened. Their eyes darted between Lena and their own leadership, like they were realizing something uncomfortable. Lena wasn't reacting like a victim. She was acting like an instructor. And she was treating them the way instructors treat trainees who think arrogance is strength. Midway through the circuit, one specialist slipped on the rope climb and dropped hard onto the mat. He cursed and rolled over, clutching his shoulder. The crowd tensed. Lena moved instantly. Not rushed, not panicked, but fast. Kneeling beside him, she checked his arm with controlled hands, asked short questions, watched his pupils, monitored his breathing. Her fingers didn't shake. Her voice didn't climb. You're going to breathe through it, she said. Slow. Someone nearby blinked. How does she? Lena looked up. Medic, she called. A combat medic jogged over. Lena gave a clean report. Possible strain, no visible deformity, pain on rotation, circulation intact. The medic stared at her, surprised by the precision. When the soldier was moved off the lane, Vance tried to turn it into a joke again. Look at her, he called out. Playing hero now. No one laughed as hard this time. Some didn't laugh at all. Lena stood, wiped mud from her knee and faced the formation. We continue, she said. Vance's jaw tightened. He was sweating now, not just from exertion, but from something else, from the feeling that his control of the room was slipping. He tried a different tactic. He started provoking louder. Oh, come on, he said as they lined up for the next drill. You gonna kick me back too, Carter? A few soldiers looked away. Uncomfortable. A few waited for Lena's reaction. What would you have done in that moment? Would you have snapped? Would you have shouted? Would you have tried to humiliate him the way he humiliated her? Lena didn't move. She didn't give him a reaction to feed on. She checked her stopwatch. On my count, she said. Vance scoffed. You're really enjoying this. Lena's eyes lifted, calm and cold. I'm doing my job, she said. Then she blew the whistle. They ran. The laughter became whispers. The whispers became silence. And the silence became something heavier than fear. Unease. Because everyone could feel it now. This wasn't a woman trying to prove she was tough. This was someone who had lived inside standards so long that disrespect didn't even register as a reason to break them. Vance had kicked her in a bar, expecting her to collapse into anger. Instead, she had turned the next day into a corridor with no exits. And the longer she stayed calm, the more it felt like she was leading him somewhere he couldn't see yet. Somewhere official. Somewhere permanent. By the third day of joint training, the laughter was gone. Not replaced by respect. Not yet. It was replaced by watching. People were beginning to notice things they could not explain. It started with the scars. Not the bruise on her cheek, that one was obvious. Fading yellow and blue now. A reminder no one mentioned out loud. It was the others. A thin white line along her forearm that didn't look like a burn. A faint crescent near her collarbone, too precise to be accidental. Another just below her ribcage that disappeared when she stretched. One of the medics whispered to another, "That's not from basic." Another said, "That's not from anything I've seen." She handled weight like gravity was optional. During load carries, when others leaned forward, shoulders screaming, breath breaking, she stayed upright. Her grip never slipped. Her steps never stuttered. When someone dropped their end, she adjusted without comment, redistributing the load so smoothly it looked like choreography. "Did you see that?" one private murmured. "See what?" She didn't even strain. During water drills, it became impossible to ignore. They were timed submersions, nothing dramatic. Controlled. Safe. Standard. Everyone struggled. Except her. She didn't gulp air when she surfaced. She didn't gasp. She didn't shake. She came up slow, eyes open, breathing through her nose like she had never left the surface. One of the instructors muttered, "That's not normal." Another said, "She didn't even blink." Someone joked weakly, "Maybe she's a fish." No one laughed. Her reaction times were worse. They set up surprise drills. Simulated hazards. Sudden alarms. She moved before the sound finished. Before people registered what had happened, she was already redirecting, already positioning, already pointing. Left side clear. Trip hazard. Down. Not shouted, not dramatic. Just precise. A specialist tripped once, not badly, but enough to scrape his knee. Before anyone else reacted, she was already kneeling, already checking his pupils, already scanning the environment for secondary risks. "How did you—" he started. She didn't answer. She finished, stood, and walked away. At lunch, two soldiers leaned toward each other. "She's not normal," one whispered. "What does that even mean?" "It means she's not what she says she is." The badge still said, Lena Carter. Logistics support. Temporary assignment. Unthreatening. The words didn't fit anymore. A retired chief warrant officer had been observing from a distance, leaning on his cane near the edge of the yard. He had been invited to speak later that week. He wasn't part of the training. He just watched. He noticed how she stood. Not stiff. Not relaxed. Ready. Weight balanced. Knees unlocked. Head level. Peripheral vision active without turning. He muttered to himself, "That's not parade posture." Someone nearby heard him. "What is it?" The old man squinted. "It's alive." They didn't understand. One afternoon, a voice slipped. It happened during a relay drill. Everyone was soaked, exhausted, annoyed. A man from another unit jogged past her, paused, then did a double take. He stared at her face, then at her hands, then at the way she was breathing. "Storm?" he said quietly. The name hung in the air. She didn't look at him. He blinked, confused, then shook his head. "Sorry," he muttered. "Thought you were someone else." But the word had landed. Storm. People repeated it under their breath. "Did you hear that?" "Storm what?" "I don't know." Later, two corporals pulled up a training manual. "Why does she know these procedures?" one asked. "What procedures?" "Extraction prioritization. Signal timing. Those aren't taught here." They watched her from across the yard. She didn't check manuals. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. She just knew. The bartender from the off-base bar visited the training yard one afternoon with a supply delivery. He recognized her instantly. He stood still when he saw her, watched. Then he whispered to the quartermaster beside him, "That girl's dangerous." The quartermaster laughed. "She looks like a librarian." The bartender shook his head. "No, she looks like someone who's buried things." Vance noticed the change before anyone admitted it. He noticed how people weren't laughing with him anymore, how they watched her, how conversations stopped when she walked past, how soldiers started standing straighter around her. It made him uneasy, so he pushed harder. He tried to bait her. Louder jokes, sharper words, a few exaggerated gestures mocking the way she breathed underwater. She didn't respond, and that silence was starting to feel intentional. He cornered one of the specialists one evening. "You think she's special now?" he sneered. The specialist hesitated. That wasn't a no. Vance clenched his jaw. "She's nobody," he said. "You hear me? Nobody." But the word felt weaker every time he said it. Because nobody doesn't move like that. Nobody doesn't breathe like that. Nobody doesn't react like that. And nobody takes a kick to the face, stands up, and builds a paper trail instead of a fist. People didn't know what she was, but they were beginning to believe she was something. And that uncertainty made the air heavier with every passing hour, not fear. Anticipation. Like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing something was about to step out of the fog. And when it did, nothing would go back to normal. The drill that changed everything wasn't supposed to be complicated. It was listed on the schedule as a basic endurance and recovery evolution. A long-distance weighted run followed by a timed water crossing, then a simulated extraction from the deep end of the training pool. Controlled. Supervised. Routine. No heroics. No drama. At least, that was the plan. The morning started cold. Wind slid across the training yard, sharp and dry. Everyone was already tired. Muscles ached. Joints protested. Tempers sat just under the skin. Vance had been louder than usual, cracking jokes, mocking Lena's clipboard, exaggerating her calm breathing with fake meditation poses. "You gonna levitate next?" he called out. A few soldiers laughed. Not many. Lena stood at the pool's edge, stopwatch in hand, eyes moving across the formation like she was counting something invisible. "Pairs," she said. "One swimmer, one spotter. You will rotate." The pool was deep enough to matter. Not dangerous, but deep. Everyone took it lightly, except Lena. She explained the drill once, then again, slower, then demonstrated the hand signals. She made sure every spotter repeated the instructions. No one listened closely. They never did. The first few rotations went fine. Sloppy, but fine. Some struggled. Some showed off. Some complained. Lena logged everything. When it was Vance's turn, he smirked. "Watch this," he said loudly. "Try not to cry, Carter." He dove in hard, splashing like he wanted to dominate the water itself. His strokes were powerful but inefficient. He burned energy too fast, held his breath too long. People noticed. He reached the midpoint of the pool and hesitated. Then coughed. It was small at first. A miscalculation. A tiny panic. He inhaled water. He swallowed. Then he thrashed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But wrong. Anyone who had spent time in water could see it. His spotter laughed at first. "Stop messing around," Vance tried to signal. His hand twitched. His legs kicked unevenly. His face dipped under. Then didn't come back up. A few seconds passed. Then a few more. Someone frowned. "Is he?" The spotter leaned forward. "Vance?" The water rippled. No response. Lena was already moving. Not running. Not shouting. Moving. She dropped the stopwatch. It hit the concrete with a hollow sound. Her boots were off before anyone realized she had bent down. Her jacket followed. She stepped into the pool without a word. No dive, no splash. Just entry. She submerged. The pool went silent, not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that eats sound. 10 seconds. Someone whispered, "What's happening?" 20 seconds. A soldier stood. Is this part of it? Lena broke the surface once. Not for air, to adjust. Then she went back down. 30 seconds. People were standing now, not laughing. Watching. The spotter's face drained of color. He's not coming up. Someone shouted, "Get a medic!" Lena surfaced again. This time, she had him. Not cradled, not dragged. Positioned, her arm locked under his shoulder. Her grip precise, her legs kicked in controlled, efficient movements. She wasn't struggling, she was working. When she reached the edge, she lifted him out with the help of 2 stunned soldiers. She didn't yell. Didn't call for attention. She checked his airway, rolled him, struck his back twice, controlled, sharp. Water spilled from his mouth. He coughed. Hard, gasped. Her hands were already on his pulse. Steady. She tilted his chin, checked his pupils, counted his breaths. No panic. No wasted motion. Someone finally yelled for the medic. Lena didn't look up. She didn't need to. She was already ahead. When the medic arrived, Lena gave a short, clipped report. Near drowning. Panic inhalation. Pulse stable. Breathing returning. No spinal trauma. Monitor for delayed respiratory distress. The medic stared at her. Then nodded. They lifted Vance onto a stretcher. He was coughing now. Weak. Embarrassed. Alive. As they wheeled him away, his eyes met hers. For the first time since the bar, he didn't look amused. He looked small. Lena stood. Put her boots back on. Picked up her jacket. Then, without waiting for a reaction, she walked back to the pool's edge. "Reset," she said. The word hit like thunder. No one moved. She turned. "Pairs," she repeated. Next rotation. Someone finally spoke. He almost died. Lena looked at him. "He didn't," she said. Next rotation. Her voice wasn't cold. It was steady. People obeyed. Not because she told them to, because they couldn't process what had just happened. The drills continued, but they were no longer the same. Eyes followed her now, not with mockery, with something else. When someone stumbled, she was there. When someone misjudged, she corrected, always without show. Always without commentary. Later, when the medic cleared Vance to sit up, whispers spread. She pulled him out like it was nothing. She didn't even hesitate. She didn't look scared. How long was she under? Longer than anyone here. Someone tried to thank her. A young specialist jogged up, breathless. "Hey, that was insane. You saved him." Lena didn't stop walking. "I did my job," she said. Another voice. "You could have let him drown." Lena paused. Turned. Her eyes were unreadable. "That is not a choice," she said. Then she walked away. People began to stand straighter when she passed, not because she demanded it, because they felt something change. The older veteran on the sidelines had been watching everything. He lowered his coffee cup slowly. "That wasn't training," he muttered. "What was it?" someone asked. The old man exhaled. "That was instinct." That evening, in the mess hall, the tone had shifted. No one laughed loudly. No one made jokes about kicks. No one mimicked her breathing. They watched her instead, not staring. Observing, trying to understand. A few soldiers debated quietly. She moved before anyone else. She didn't panic. She didn't look surprised. It was like she expected it. Vance sat alone, towel around his shoulders, staring into nothing. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't joked. When someone tried to rib him, he snapped, "Shut up." They did. When Lena walked past, he flinched. Actually flinched. She didn't acknowledge him, didn't look at him, didn't slow. Later, someone asked her directly, "How did you know what to do?" Lena paused. Not long. Just enough to be noticeable. "Because I was paying attention," she said. That was all, but it wasn't the truth. Not the full one. The truth was in how she had entered the water, how she had found him without searching, how she had positioned her body, how she had adjusted her buoyancy, how she had calculated everything in less than a second. The truth was in the way she didn't look proud, didn't look shaken, didn't look relieved, just neutral. Like this wasn't the first life she had pulled back from the edge. That night, the whispers weren't cruel. They were confused. She's not what I thought. She's not what she looks like. She could have let him suffer, but she didn't. One soldier said quietly, "She could have made a show of it." Another replied, "She didn't need to." That was when the shift truly happened. Not into admiration. Not into loyalty. Into doubt. Doubt about what they thought they knew. About her. About themselves. About what strength actually looked like. Lena sat on her bunk that night, book open, bruise fading. She read 2 pages. Didn't remember either of them. She replayed the drill in her head. Not with emotion. With assessment. No mistakes. No delays. No deviations. She closed the book, laid it beside her, folded her hands, breathed. 4 seconds in. 4 seconds out. And somewhere, without her knowing it, the story of the kick had been replaced by another one, not louder, not flashier, more dangerous. The story of a woman who didn't need to prove anything, because she already had. And she had done it without saying a single word. No one spoke. Not right away. The commander had left as quietly as he arrived, his words still hanging in the cold air like a weight no one knew how to set down. Training resumed, but it felt different now. Slower. Heavier. Every movement seemed louder. Lena No, Storm, stood exactly where she had been, not taller. Not prouder. Just present. The men who had laughed at her before didn't laugh now. They avoided her eyes. Some stared at the ground. Others pretended to be busy adjusting straps that didn't need adjusting. No one whispered. No one joked. They didn't need to. Their faces said everything. She walked past them, clipboard tucked under her arm, footsteps steady. When she passed, conversation stopped. When she looked up, gazes dropped. Not because she demanded it, because they could not meet her eyes. And then there was Vance. He stood near the edge of the yard, hands resting on his hips, chest rising too fast for someone not exerting himself. His face was pale, lips dry. The swagger that once filled every inch of him was gone. He had seen the salute. He had heard the name. He understood now. He watched her approach, not with anger. With fear. She stopped a few feet in front of him. Not close enough to threaten, not far enough to avoid. Just enough to be unavoidable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched. Then Vance swallowed. "I didn't know," he said. His voice cracked on the last word. Storm didn't respond. She didn't tilt her head. Didn't sigh. Didn't cross her arms. She just waited. "I thought you were," he faltered, searching for words that no longer existed. "I thought you were nothing." The word sounded smaller now. He laughed once, hollow. "You let me," his voice broke again. "You let me think you were weak." Storm looked at him. Not with hatred, not with triumph. With something worse. Clarity. "I didn't let you," she said. "You chose it." That was all. No lecture. No accusation. Just truth. Vance's shoulders sagged. He ran a hand over his face. "I kicked you," he whispered. In front of everyone. Storm didn't flinch. "I know," she said. "I thought you were afraid of me," he continued. "I thought that I mattered." His laugh this time was shaky. "I didn't even matter enough to make you angry." That was when he broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. His head bowed. His shoulders trembled once. His hands clenched like he didn't know what to do with them. "I've never been smaller," he whispered. Storm said nothing. She didn't comfort him. She didn't condemn him. She stood there. And somehow, that was worse than anything she could have done. "I would have died in that pool," he said. "If it wasn't for you." Storm nodded once. "Yes," she said. That was not a threat. It was a fact. He looked up at her, eyes red. "Why?" he asked. "Why didn't you let me?" Storm met his gaze. "Because my job is to bring people back," she said. Not erase them. That landed harder than any blow. Vance stepped back. Not in fear. In collapse. He had nothing left to hold himself up with. She didn't wait for an apology. Didn't demand one. She turned and walked away. Behind her, he sank onto the bench, staring at the ground, hands shaking. The other men watched, not with satisfaction, with something closer to shame. Storm moved through them like weather. Not loud, not gentle. Inevitable. One soldier stepped aside without realizing he was doing it. Another straightened. A third whispered, "That's her," not in awe. In recognition. No one clapped. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Respect didn't arrive as noise. It arrived as stillness. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not in her. In them. Because they finally understood. She hadn't been silent because she was weak. She had been silent because she was disciplined. And discipline, once seen, cannot be unseen. Storm reached the far end of the yard, paused, and glanced back once. Not at Vance. At the formation. They stood differently now, not because she asked, because they knew. And that knowledge weighed more than any command ever could. She turned forward again, and kept walking. Storm did not celebrate. There was no smile, no victory in her eyes, no moment where she let herself feel taller than anyone else. The day ended the same way it had begun, with work. She returned her clipboard to the office, logged her notes, signed off on the schedule, and stepped back into the routine like nothing extraordinary had happened. Because to her, it hadn't. Later that afternoon, while most of the trainees lingered in clusters, whispering and processing what they had witnessed, Storm sat on the edge of the bleachers, retightening the laces of her boots. A young private hovered nearby. She couldn't have been more than 19. Her uniform was too new, her posture too stiff, her eyes too unsure. She cleared her throat. "Ma'am?" Storm looked up. "Yes." The private hesitated. "I keep messing up the breathing pattern in the water drills." Storm studied her for a moment. Not critically. Carefully. "Sit," she said. The private obeyed. Storm didn't lecture. She didn't perform. She didn't mention who she was or what she had done. She demonstrated. Slow inhale. Controlled hold. Gentle release. "Your body will panic before your mind does," she said. "You have to teach it otherwise." The private tried again. "Better." Storm nodded once. That was her praise. No one noticed them. And that was exactly how Storm preferred it. As evening settled, the bass quieted. The air cooled. The sound softened. Somewhere, laughter returned lighter this time. Not cruel. Storm walked alone along the perimeter, hands folded behind her back, eyes scanning out of habit. Not fear. Habit. People who passed her now did so differently. Not with whispers, with space, with respect. But she did not absorb it. She did not feed on it, because real strength, she knew, wasn't something you consumed. It was something you carried, quietly. The narrator might tell you that power looks like dominance, that it looks like shouting, that it looks like the last word, but that isn't true. True power is the ability to stand still when you are provoked. True power is the discipline to document instead of destroy. True power is choosing restraint when you could choose chaos. Storm had taken a kick to the face and responded with silence, structure, and patience. And in doing so, she had rewritten the room, not through force, through presence. Before she turned in for the night, she paused outside the pool. The water was still. She looked at it for a moment. Then she walked away. Because her work wasn't about being seen. It was about what came next. Moral: the strongest people are not the loudest. They are the ones who stay disciplined when the world expects them to break. What happened to her didn't begin with honor. It began with humiliation. With laughter. With a kick meant to erase her worth in front of strangers. And yet, what followed wasn't revenge. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't fists. It was discipline. It was silence. It was a kind of strength most people don't recognize until it's already changed everything. Storm didn't prove who she was by hurting anyone. She proved it by staying steady when the world expected her to shatter. By choosing restraint over rage. By choosing patience over pride. And by turning one cruel moment into a future where others would never have to endure the same thing. Because real strength doesn't demand attention. It earns it, quietly. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more FOB veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come.